Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're taking a really focused look at a deeply tragic event that's recently captured the world's attention. Our main goal here? Separating scientific fact from viral fiction. You know, when a disaster strikes, searching for answers is just a totally natural human response. But sometimes, unfortunately, that search leads us completely away from geological reality and straight into the arms of misinformation. So in this Explainer, we're going to look closely at the devastating earthquake that recently struck Colombia. We'll explore the undeniable science behind exactly why these earthquakes happen naturally, and we're going to methodically examine and ultimately refute those bizarre online rumors blaming a remote atmospheric research facility for the tragedy.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's exactly what we're covering today. First, the earthquake tragedy and the conspiracy theory. Second, the science behind natural earthquakes. Third, what the HARP program actually is. And fourth, the scientific refutation of the conspiracy.
All right, Part 1, the earthquake tragedy and the conspiracy theory.
On Monday, a massive earthquake struck western Colombia. The U.S. Geological Survey recorded the magnitude at a staggering 7.4. Now, a number like that on the Richter scale, that indicates a major seismic event. It's the kind of force capable of severe, widespread damage, instantly transforming the landscape and the lives of everyone in the affected region.
And the human toll here is just heartbreaking. This disaster has tragically claimed at least 270 lives, with hundreds more still missing. Right now, soldiers and rescue workers are relentlessly clearing debris in places like Cali, Colombia, as tons of aid from regional partners roll in. And I want to emphasize this. During moments of intense crisis and active rescue efforts, having access to accurate factual information isn't just a nice-to-have, it is absolutely critical. Misinformation causes completely unnecessary panic when clarity is what people literally need to survive.
But almost the second the ground stopped shaking, a completely different, entirely baseless narrative started trending. Viral posts began claiming that the earthquake was caused by HARP, the high-frequency active auroral research program located thousands of miles away in Alaska. I mean, it's a wild, bizarre claim, right? Pointing fingers at an atmospheric research facility for a subterranean disaster. So how do we evaluate something like this? Well, we turn to the science.
Which brings us to Part 2, the science behind natural earthquakes.
So, the U.S. Geological Survey confirmed that the Colombia earthquake was naturally caused, primarily by something known as strike-slip faulting. Think of it like this. Imagine two massive puzzle pieces of the Earth's crust pressed really tightly together, but instead of moving up and down, they're trying to slide horizontally past one another. Over time, immense friction builds up. They get locked in place while all this tectonic pressure just keeps mounting. And then, when that tension finally overcomes the friction, the plates violently snap past each other. That sudden massive release of pent-up kinetic energy, that is your earthquake.
And honestly, given Colombia's location, this natural occurrence is entirely expected. The epicenter was right in the country's Pacific region, which sits squarely on what we call the Ring of Fire. This is a massive, horseshoe-shaped line of highly active seismic faults encircling the Pacific Ocean. Because the tectonic plates are constantly moving in this boundary zone, the vast majority of the world's earthquakes happen exactly right here. The Earth is quite literally wired for seismic activity in this region.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how quickly we can dispel the idea of human interference just by looking at the depth of the quake. Yes, human activities, like gas extraction or wastewater injection, can sometimes induce small or moderate earthquakes. But those human-caused quakes occur very close to the surface. The earthquake in Colombia originated at a depth of 110 kilometers. To put that in perspective, that is at least 10 times deeper than any earthquake ever induced by human activity. We simply don't have the technology to reach, let alone trigger, geological shifts that deep in the Earth.
Just to hammer the geological consensus home, let's look at what Susan Vanderlee, a seismologist at Northwestern University, has to say. She states it unequivocally. No human endeavor caused this earthquake. The Colombia earthquake occurred in a region with many natural earthquakes. So this wasn't some strange anomaly. It was a devastating but completely natural force of our dynamic planet.
Moving on to Part 3. What exactly is the HARP program? Let's walk through the timeline to clear up the mystery here. HARP was built by the U.S. military back in the early 1990s. And because of its military roots and super complex technology, it almost instantly became a magnet for conspiracy theories. People claimed it was a mind control device or a weather manipulation weapon. But in 2015, operations were officially handed over to the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Today, it's strictly an academic research facility. Yet somehow, despite being a university-run program, in 2026, it finds itself being falsely blamed for a seismic disaster down in South America.
So what are they actually doing up there? Well, HARP researchers studied the physical processes of the thermosphere and ionosphere, basically the very highest parts of Earth's atmosphere. To do that, they use the Ionospheric Research Instrument, or IRI, which is the world's most powerful high-frequency radio transmitter. It temporarily heats up these tiny, targeted regions of the upper atmosphere so scientists can study the effects. But notice the key words here: upper atmosphere and radio transmitter. This technology is completely disconnected from the deep, subterranean crust of the Earth where tectonic plates actually live.
And that leads us to part 4, the scientific refutation of the conspiracy.
Listen to how Dean Whitman, a geophysicist at Florida International University, responds to this HARP theory. He calls the whole hypothesis utterly ridiculous, saying, and I quote, "I can confidently state that there is zero physical basis for radio frequency transmissions having any effects on the occurrence of earthquakes." When geophysicists look at these viral claims, they don't just see them as unlikely, they see them as fundamentally impossible based on the laws of physics.
Let's break down exactly why it's impossible, starting with the sheer absurdity of the scale. The amount of energy released by a 7.4 magnitude earthquake is almost incomprehensible. Experts point out that the kinetic energy unleashed beneath Colombia was vastly larger than the energy from even the largest hydrogen bombs ever created. And it was millions of times larger than the maximum energy output HARP could ever possibly produce. Blaming HARP for this earthquake is literally like blaming a laser pointer for a massive forest fire. The energy scales aren't even in the same universe.
And this brilliantly illustrates the 3 undeniable facts shutting this hoax down. Number 1, the energy scale mismatch we just talked about. HARP is millions of times too weak to cause a tremor of this size. Number 2, directional impossibility. HARP's equipment is specifically built to point upward into the ionosphere, not downward, 110 kilometers into the Earth's solid crust. And number 3, differing physics. HARP uses electromagnetic radio waves. Earthquakes are a release of mechanical, kinetic energy from rock friction. Electromagnetic waves just cannot trigger heavy geological plate shifts. It's an entirely different set of physical laws. So the scientific refutation here is absolute.
Which brings us to a final, pretty provocative thought. If the science is this incredibly clear, if geology proves this was a natural disaster in the Ring of Fire, and physics proves HARP is fundamentally incapable of causing an earthquake, why do these rumors spread like wildfire? Why is it sometimes easier to believe fiction in the midst of a tragedy? Maybe it's because a conspiracy gives us a villain, someone to blame, whereas tectonic plates shifting is just a terrifying random act of nature that we have zero control over. As we all consume information during global crises, let this explainer serve as a powerful reminder of why we absolutely have to lean on objective facts, media literacy, and scientific consensus, rather than the comforting but ultimately deceptive illusions of social media. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack the facts today. Keep asking the right questions and stay curious.